Hello, my beautiful friends. I am Laurel Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while deepening in your connection with your beautiful team of angels who love you so. If we're meeting for the first time, I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And I have to say, I love my self-appointed job title. In the kind of job that I have, I can call myself whatever I want. I used to call myself a channel for the angelic realms, which is also true and beautiful. But over the past few years, I have synthesized it to angelic practitioner, spiritual teacher, and encourager of souls, because as you might come to know, I always seem to use way more words than are absolutely necessary. I guess I have a poet's heart. And it's a wonderful job, I have to say. I get to inspire. I get to bring love. I get to help you remember who you are as a divine being in human form. And my offerings include one-on-one angel sessions, which take place over the phone, where we have a soul-inspired conversation and I bring forward messages from the angels for you. I also offer soul mentoring, which provides for ongoing support as you move through a time of change or growth or healing. And then I also offer a wide variety of classes. About every 6 weeks, I bring forward a new offering. And if you're ever interested in participating in one of my classes, just so you know, they are almost always small and intimate, anywhere between 4 to 10 people. So we get lots of time to converse and get to know each other. And the classes happen over Zoom. And you'll meet some of the loveliest people if you ever choose to join us. And you can learn more about all my offerings at illuminatingsouls.com, where you also can sign up for my daily inspiration email list. So that's a bit of what I do in my waking hours. But here we're going to be talking about rest and sleep. And I am someone who listens to sleep podcasts every night, and this is why I have created this for you. My intention is for this to be a cozy, soothing, love-filled place where you can curl up and relax, drift off to sleep if that is your intention, or else I can keep you company as you go about your day. But there will be no loud voices or noises. I will speak to you in a way that is a bit rambling, perhaps a little bit boring, and that's intentional. This is not meant to be a narrative that you have to follow and you have to pay attention. More, I'm going to be kind of a wandering voice, keeping you company for the next hour or so. So you'll have plenty of time to drift off to sleep, if that is what you wish. My preference for sleep podcasts is that they last an hour or longer, because I never want to feel pressured to go to sleep. That's why this episode is going to be about an hour long. And if you want something longer, you can always set up a playlist in your favorite podcast app, because there are over episodes. So I can keep you company for days. So I invite you to curl on up, get cozy, snuggle in whatever way works best for you. I happen to love lots of pillows and blankets, so at night, I really curl up. I really get cozy. And my body just sighs. My body is so happy. It's like, great, we did another day, and now we get to rest. So as I'm talking to you, the angels are already bringing forward waves of love for you. And we all experience this differently. You might actually feel it. Some people do. It's called clairsentience. So you might feel some tingles. You might feel a loving presence. You might even feel some tears welling up in your eyes. And that's often a sign that the angels are with you. If you're not feeling this, don't worry. It doesn't mean they're not with you. You can imagine their presence. And I often encourage you to use your imagination when it comes to the love of the angels, because our imagination often overlaps with our divine guidance. So the imagination can serve as a gateway to open us up to the angels that are with us. For me, I imagine the most loving presence in the universe is with me. I imagine what it would feel like to have them shining love upon me. And I imagine the messages they would say to me. And often it starts the flow. You know, we have to start somewhere. I think many of us wish for something that is so visceral and different than our ordinary reality that we would absolutely positively know we were having a divine experience. But the truth is, it is often much more subtle. So subtle, most of us don't even know it is happening. And this is why I encourage you to use your imagination to begin to open to their love. So I invite you to take a nice deep breath in and release. And just allow your body to settle down. Allowing your body to relax and replenish and receive the love that is streaming to you now. And I'm going to call in the angels. They're here already, but I love sharing this ritual with you. So beautiful angels on high, I invite you to join us here, and we welcome you into our hearts. Thank you for helping to co-create this beautiful divine sanctuary where we can rest and replenish. And angels, I ask that you bring forward waves of love in ways that are meaningful for each of our beloveds listening to this message. I ask that you help bring them ease, healing, inspiration, and light. And dear ones, just take some nice deep breaths in and out. And if you have any prayers or intentions that you wish to share with the divine, I invite you to bring them into your heart now. And as you do, Your prayers and intentions are received in the heart of God. Just before I started recording this episode, I pulled a card from the Healing with the Angels Oracle deck. And the card that came forward is New Beginnings. I always love the energy of that card. It signals that new portals are opening up. It's an invitation to experience this moment in a new way. And I love the invitation of new beginnings. So I invite you to gently contemplate how new beginnings might be showing up for you. It's like, what seeds are being planted? What inspiration is flowing to you? How are you blossoming open? As I record this, it is February, and I'm starting to get all kinds of seed catalogs for the summer gardens. And there's something so beautiful about this invitation to contemplate what we might want to be planting in the coming months. It's this promise that the entelechy of a seed is to germinate and become a plant that can provide us with sustenance. And so that's a metaphor for life. It's not just the summer gardens with our vegetables or flowers. It's our life. So, my sweet friend, I affirm that beautiful seeds of potential and joyful opportunity are germinating in your name. That inspiration is finding you and will be finding you in the days and weeks to come. And you don't have to make it happen, just like the seeds that come in the little envelopes. Your spirit is filled with the wisdom and the life force to help you blossom open into something new and wonderful that will delight you. You don't have to figure it out. Just in this moment, allow yourself to call to you your beautiful, authentic spirit. That even if your body is tired, your spirit is vibrant. That even as you rest, your divine spirit, your soul, is dancing in the universe in service to helping cultivate a beautiful path of light for you. So take a deep breath in, allowing your physical body to rest, allowing your conscious mind to relax and just listen to the rhythm of my voice so that you can drift off into that beautiful mystery of sleep. And just breathe and know that there is so much love here for you. That co-creation happens multidimensionally across the timeline of our lives. so that even if you're tired, even if you're not sure where you're going or what to do, the greater expanse of all that you are is navigating, is helping, is supporting you on your life's path, as are your angels. You have so much support flowing to you now, even while you rest. So allow the love of your angels to stream to you now. They are saying prayers on your behalf, and they are whispering messages of encouragement and comfort to your heart. You, my friend, you are precious in all this world. And we are so deeply grateful for you. And I am so grateful to be with you in this light-filled sanctuary that we call Sleepy Bedtime Blessings. That together we are creating a beautiful matrix filled with light, a place where you can rest into, knowing that you are loved and supported. And so you go ahead and rest, and your angels will be with you. And while you rest, I'm going to wander through some stories for you. And so for story time, we are going to wander. That is the inspiration for this story time, the art of wandering. This is actually a topic I was going to create an episode about when I was doing my first podcast, Musings of an Earth Girl, which is still available, but I don't publish episodes to it anymore. Because I had started to contemplate how often I have loved wandering. And as I was contemplating recording this episode earlier this week, I was not yet connected with the inspiration of what our theme would be. So there's different kinds of episodes that I create here. Some are me meandering through my own memories and reflections, and that's what we're going to do here in this episode. In other kinds of episodes, I might read to you from the public domain, or flip through the pages of an old TV guide or cookbook or catalog. And each kind of episode has its own place in my heart. But it might not surprise you to know that the ones where I'm flipping through the pages of an old publication or reading to you are a little bit more work, because I have to stop and start, or I might make a mistake, and it's not terribly hard. It's not as if I'm doing manual labor. I just mean in terms of how I hold in consciousness, it's a little bit different. And for me, just talking comes easily. And I'm not saying I'm amazingly entertaining the whole time, but it's a sleep podcast, and it's not as if I have to come up with 60 minutes of riveting material. I am just here to keep you company and be a sweet and friendly, loving voice prattling on in the background while you drift off or go about your day if you're using this in your daytime hours. So the bar's pretty low. So for me, the easiest episodes to create and edit are the ones where I just share about my life and I wander. And so was it yesterday or the day before, as I was contemplating this episode, I thought, oh, I just want to wander. I don't want to have to read something or figure out what I'm going to do. I just want to wander with you, which is such an organic form of conversation that we all participate in all the time, right? When you meet a friend for lunch, you don't have a planned agenda. You wander in and out of conversation. And there's such rich intimacy in wandering. And so that's what we're going to contemplate in this episode, is some of the different ways that wandering has shown up in my life. So as I was contemplating this, there were two really significant memories that showed up for me. One is from childhood, and I think it must have started somewhere around maybe 10 years old until I was sort of in my adolescence. It may have started younger, but it's this, I'm going to call it a memory, even though it never happened in physical world, where in the wee hours of the morning, so usually around 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., I would visualize or imagine, or maybe it was astral projecting, I really don't know, going out of my parents' house, going down the stairs, and then walking up Howard, which was the busier street that ran perpendicular to the block we lived on. And it wasn't busy. When I say busy, it wasn't high traffic, and certainly not in the wee hours of the morning. And I would walk in the direction of White Hen Pantry. Not that I ever went there in these visits, but that would be the direction. I would always go in the same direction. And this happened many times. And to this day, I can still see it in my mind's eye and feel it on my skin. It's always like a cool summer night. So it's never in the winter. So I can see the trees are filled with leaves. So there's a little bit of a rustling. You can hear the crickets at night singing their song. And it would always soothe me. And I don't really know what that was all about, but I now think, I wonder if I was astral projecting, because it was always so real to me that I almost wondered if I would sleepwalk and do that. Like, was I really going in my physical body? But I don't think I did. But that's one of my first awarenesses of wandering. So that might sound like a little bit of a strange one, but it came forward, and so I thought I would share it with you. The memory is so strong for me still. And it's interesting that I always went in the same direction on the same side of the street. And there was something very soothing about it. So the second wandering episode that I want to share with you happened when I was living in Los Angeles. And I started doing this in the mid-'80s. And it involved going to the Bodhi Tree bookstore. So if you're not from Los Angeles, you might not know about the Bodhi Tree. But the Bodhi Tree was a well-established, well-loved metaphysical bookstore in West Hollywood. So I opened to the world of metaphysics and the New Age in the late 1980s. Louise Hay was just getting started with You Can Heal Your Life. I had just enrolled at Pepperdine University for my MBA, which I never did get. And I had to take a class in human development that was taught by a professor who used law of attraction and metaphysics as the gateway to talk about human potential. And this is what opened me up to this world. You can hear more about that part of the story in the episode called My First Psychic Experience. And that's also when I connected with my friend Judy, or I also call Judes. And so I think my first trip to the Bodhi Tree likely happened with Judes and maybe another friend. Because you have to remember that back in the late 1980s, the mainstream internet did not exist. Amazon hadn't yet been launched from Jeffrey Bezos's garage. The only way to buy books was to go to the bookstore. And most mainstream bookstores didn't have big metaphysical sections. This was not mainstream. So to have a bookstore like the Bodhi Tree was a really extraordinary experience. And everything was new to me. Now, the thing about the location of the Bodhi Tree, it was at 8585 Melrose. I will always remember that address. It's easy to remember. But in that neighborhood, parking was impossible. It was adjacent to a residential neighborhood, which most of the neighborhoods in Los Angeles are. LA is very densely populated. And so you couldn't ever park on the side streets because it was all permit parking. And to get a meter near the Bodhi Tree was hit or miss. It wasn't easy to find a parking space near the Bodhi Tree. And they had 2 precious parking spaces at the Bodhi Tree itself, which I think perhaps maybe once or twice in my life I was fortunate enough to get one of those. And then, to make things even more difficult, where I lived in West Hollywood, parking was hard. And for about 1.5 years, I lived in a 2-bedroom with a roommate, and we just had 1 parking space. And so, if I was parked on the street, I wouldn't want to leave because I wouldn't know if I would get a parking space when I would come back. So it's weird how parking difficulties created this opportunity to wander that we're going to talk about. So at some point I decided that I would just walk to the Bodhi Tree. Well, I wanted to maybe get a little exercise. I think this is before we thought of walking as exercise. It was like a time in the world when we thought drinking bottled water was weird, right? It's interesting how things change. And so I carried this little purse that I could do crossbody that had a credit card and my driver's license and a little bit of cash. And the thing that I discovered about walking to the Bodhi Tree, which I just looked it up on Google Maps, and it would have been about 1.3 miles from my apartment, was where I lived was always very, very busy and noisy. Again, densely populated, lots of apartments and cars and traffic. And I would start walking down these different side streets. To go to the Bodhi Tree, I didn't just walk down the main streets. I would take an opportunity to look at the different neighborhoods. The joy of walking down a block and seeing different homes and wondering who lives there, seeing their gardens or what's in their windows. Not in a creepy stalker kind of way, but just more that passing humanity, curiosity way of wandering. And I came to love these walks to the Bodhi Tree, and each time I went a different way. That was part of my agreement with myself is, I would always try and change it up a little bit. And eventually I would arrive there. And I thought I would wander through the experience of the Bodhi Tree with you. So it was on Melrose, and you went up, I think maybe about 5 stairs to get into the store. So there's always those little newsstand boxes with free newspapers at the entrance, but I usually didn't pick those up right away. Instead, I would go up the stairs and come into the front door of the Bodhi Tree. And when you come in, on the left-hand side was a very long counter that wrapped around. And so that's where you would check out. And right in front of you, as soon as you entered, before you made your first left turn, there was usually a wall filled with candles or knickknacks. But as soon as you walked into the Bodhi Tree, you entered into a different world. There was always music playing in the background. There were delicious scents, the candles and the incense, and the energy was calm. So if you can imagine a well-loved metaphysical store, it has a different kind of energy field. So I would go up the stairs, I would see what knickknacks were on that front wall, and then I would make my little turn to go past the long counter. And then usually just to the right, there's a magazine rack. Again, so many interesting metaphysical magazines about yoga, about consciousness, about astrology. And again, remember this time on the timeline, we don't have the internet to look things up. There's no YouTube. There's no Amazon. So we had public libraries. We had the big chain bookstores. And then we had the Bodhi Tree. So at this time in my life, everything was new to me. And as a little aside, astrologically, I have Mercury in Gemini. I don't expect you to know what that means, but I'll tell you. So Mercury is the planet that rules our mind. And Gemini is a sign of intellect and thought. So people with the aspect of Mercury and Gemini, we are binge learners. When there's something we want to learn, we want to know everything right now. So I'd started this class at Pepperdine and became enthralled with the world of metaphysics. So my little Mercury and Gemini mind, I wanted to know everything. I wanted to metabolize 10 lifetimes of information in a month kind of thing. So I would wander through the Bodhi Tree. So there were the magazines, which I wasn't as interested in. And then there was usually a display of some of the books that they were featuring. You never knew what you would find in that front display. And then there were different areas and alcoves where each subject had its own section. So you could find a section on Atlantis, or a big section on astrology, or past life regression. Whatever you're interested in, they had all the books. And there was nowhere else you could go to wander through this selection, right? How was I going to know what kind of books on Atlantis might exist if there's no internet? And the library wasn't going to have them. These weren't the kinds of books that they stocked. So I'd go to the Bodhi Tree, It was almost like being in this great hall of knowledge. And I would wander through all the shelves. And there were a couple of chairs scattered about different parts of the store. So on a good day, I would get one of the chairs because they were always full. And they always had this delicious herbal tea brewing. So you could wander through the shelves of the bookstore and get your stack of books that you were interested in and hopefully manifest an empty chair and get a cup of tea and sit. And I always bought one or two books, so I didn't just go there and read for free. I looked through the books to see which ones were supposed to come home with me. And I can just visualize the layout of the store. So I seem to recall that to the right and back of the store, they had a lot on Eastern religion, I think. I might be wrong about the layout of the store, and philosophy. And I've mentioned that because I didn't spend a lot of time there. There was another alcove right when you walked in, and if you just kept walking straight to the back of the store that way, that's to me where a lot of the magic was. There were things about Atlantis and Lemuria, like all these things I had no idea about. There's lots of cool mystical stuff back there. And then I was also really enchanted by the past lives section. Oh, I was so enamored by this concept of past lives and reincarnation. It's interesting that I was not interested in angels at all at that point. The angelic connection hadn't yet been awakened for me. It was more as if I was learning the ropes, like, okay, how does all of this work? And then there were also books on numerology and dowsing using pendulums. And I was also deeply interested in Hawaiian shamanism, huna, because that was my foray into metaphysics, was the book Mastering Your Hidden Self by Serge Kahali King. So I would spend easily an hour or two in the bookstore looking for treasures. You know, the kind of oracle cards we are used to now, you know, the angel oracle cards, they weren't a thing yet, so they just had tarot decks, and I remember not necessarily being tremendously interested in those. So at some point, I would put the books that I wasn't going to get away, because I was not the kind of heathen that would just leave them out for someone else to put away. I would always find where they went and I would put them back. And I would take my one or two treasures up to the counter to check out. And there was almost always a line at the counter, and it wrapped around. So as you were approaching the counter, and one side of the counter had all of the jewelry and pendulums and bracelets. It was so beautiful, and they had crystals. And they had crystals at the Bodhi Tree, but I don't remember crystals being as big a thing as they are now. They might have been, and I was just oblivious to it. But I did get a few pendulums and some jewelry, because that was always really cool. And then you would wrap around the counter to pay for your purchases. And they always put a Bodhi Store bookmark in one of your books. And then they would go into a paper bag. So we weren't using plastic at that point. I mean, maybe we were somewhere, but I just remember the feeling of the crisp paper bag with one of my treasured books in it. And then I would walk outside, and the Bodhi tree was always, it wasn't dark, but it was very cozy. And then I remember I would walk out the door and go down the stairs, and it was always so bright. I had to adjust my eyes. And that's when I would pick up the free magazines that were always in those little newsstand boxes right outside the door. And then, if you've been listening to this podcast long enough, you know that many of my memories involve food, and my wanderings to the Bodhi store are no different. Oh no, it was not just about some delightful metaphysical procurement. There must be some treat involved for me as well that is food related. So there was this delicious frozen yogurt store on Santa Monica Boulevard. Now, frozen yogurt was just starting to be a thing. And there were 2 frozen yogurt stores that were popular then. One was the Big Chill, which I guess is still very popular, which is on Olympic and Westwood Boulevard. It's Big Chill, B-I-G-G. I think it has 2 G's. And the other one, and I can't remember the name of it, was on Little Santa Monica Boulevard. Now, what both of these yogurt stores had in common was they both had amazing peanut butter frozen yogurt that I loved, and neither of them had enough parking. So it really was a day filled with serendipity if you managed to get a parking space at the frozen yogurt store. So on my wandering adventures to the Bodhi Tree, I would then walk over to the frozen yogurt store, which was probably another mile away or so. And again, I would go up side streets. I would zig and I would zag, and I would try to stay away from the main thoroughfares for as long as possible. And then I would finally arrive to the frozen yogurt store, and I would get my peanut butter frozen yogurt, and I would sit there in the little window and eat it while I had my little book of whatever I had gotten at the Bodhi Tree. And it felt so decadent. Like there was something about giving myself permission to wander in this unstructured time, feasting my senses, whether it was taking in the beauty of the homes I was walking past, or being in the energy field of the Bodhi Tree, wandering through all of their books, discovering different topics, ideas I didn't even know existed, waiting for something to spark for me, and something always did. I would always leave the Bodhi Tree having received the blessing of inspiration and insight, and the feeling of being divinely engaged somehow. And then for my Earth Girl, we would go and get our frozen yogurt. And I didn't have to worry about parking because I was on my feet and I was walking and I had this freedom. And then once I finished my frozen yogurt, I then had to walk home, and I was probably about a mile away from my apartment. And by this time I'm tired. And there is no Uber. Uber doesn't exist yet. And I was not going to get a cab. LA was not a cab kind of city at that point, nor was I going to take a bus. So I really just had to walk. And I always remember on the walks home, there was very little wandering involved. It was a direct route. Like, what is the shortest point between these two distances? I need to get home now, which is always how I am. Whenever it's time to go home, I want to get home now. Whether I'm on a trip of a lifetime and having a wonderful time, but I'm knowing I'm going to be leaving tomorrow, I'm always like, okay, I need to be home now. There's something about the return journey that I find very cumbersome. It is not delightful at all. So eventually I would get home and I would have my new book. And then I would read the book and wander through its pages and learn something new. And then I would have something to go into work the next day and tell Judy about. Be like, Judy, Judy, I bought a book on, and then fill in the blank, past life regression. And so many of those books are still in my library today. And so those are just a couple of my wandering experiences. And I was thinking about how wandering shows up in my life now. And it's interesting. I don't know if you've ever thought about it this way, but social media is absolutely a form of wandering, right? There's no destination in mind. When I scroll through Instagram or I scroll through TikTok, I am doing a visual form of wandering. Like, I have no idea what's going to show up next, but let's see. Let's go down this rabbit hole. Let's turn right. Let's turn left and see what's going to happen. And the other form of wandering that I love, and I shared with you in another podcast, although not in great detail, is grocery shopping. I love to wander through a good grocery store. You know, if I'm traveling around the world, I want to go into grocery stores. I want to see what's on their shelves. So just yesterday I did this. Xfinity, who is who we have our cable and internet from, they were upgrading something in our neighborhood. And we didn't have internet or service on Wednesday, and so it was supposed to be back yesterday. And lo and behold, it wasn't, and I had work to do, and I was so frustrated. And I was like, I am going to Berkeley, and I'm going to wander. It was my soothing activity. And so there's a little Japanese market that I visited, and I didn't buy anything, but I loved going up and down the aisles to see if anything called to me, just like I would have at the Bodhi Tree, but this was food-centric. And then I went to what is one of my favorite grocery stores of all times, the Berkeley Bowl. There's two of them. There's the original Berkeley Bowl and Berkeley Bowl West. For those of you who are local, I always go to Berkeley Bowl West. And Berkeley Bowl is just this amazing grocery store. They have really great prepared foods, and it's on the healthy side. I mean, it's not a health food store, I wouldn't say, but maybe more of, it's sort of a blend between kind of a Whole Foods and your local supermarket. You know, it's kind of eclectic. And so they have amazing prepared foods. And they have a sushi bar. And then they have the most expansive array of produce I've ever experienced. So their organic section is bigger than most supermarkets' whole produce section. And then they have their conventional produce, but most of it is grown responsibly. So, for instance, right now, this time of year, so it's February, there's a lot of citrus out. So they have 10 different kinds of oranges and tangerines and satsumas, 6 different kinds of grapes, easily 20 different kinds of apples. And so I love wandering up and down the aisles at Berkeley Bowl. Their cheese section is fantastic. Their bread section is phenomenal. And so I wandered through Berkeley Bowl yesterday, and they had some heirloom navel oranges. So the heirloom is the variety. And my experience of them is they're very sweet. I have not tried these yet. I'm hoping they're sweet because I have a hard time with citrus, but I love it. So I'm hoping they're going to work for me. And I bought something called a Valentine pomelo. So if you've ever had a pomelo, it is like a giant grapefruit, only much, much sweeter and better, but still kind of tart. And I have always loved pomelos, but again, I don't do very well with citrus. So this was smaller than the usual pomelo, and I'm hoping it's going to be sweet enough that I can enjoy it. So my wanderings produced some lovely produce. And then I wandered to this wonderful bakery that's part of an outlet called the Cheese Board Collective. They also make great pizza, but I wanted to wander in there because they always have so many different kinds of bread, and I don't eat sugar anymore, so that I can get different kinds of rolls that aren't sugar-based delights me. So I bought a couple kinds of bread, including an onion bialy that I haven't eaten yet. So that's a reflection on how wandering shows up for me at this point in my life. It usually has to do with food. I used to love wandering through stores for clothes and stuff, but I don't really enjoy that anymore. It overwhelms me. I don't know, it's too much for me. So now when I go into a store for clothing or something, I'm typically very destination oriented. I need something, and so I'm going in to find it. Whereas my food forays tend to involve more wandering. And then I get to wander here with you. I mean, listen, that I am getting to wander through different parts of the timeline of my life and share these memories with you. It is so wonderful for me. I love getting to create this podcast for you. I love remembering what I used to watch on television. I love remembering the wanderings I've had. It's just delightful. So thank you, my beautiful friend, for helping me to co-create this beautiful outlet for wandering through conversations. Because I imagine if we were going out for lunch, that these are the kinds of things we would wind up telling each other. And I would not take up the full hour and not let you get a word in edgewise, just so you know. I would let you talk because I want you to talk and tell me your stories too. So if you ever decide to do a podcast where you wander through the stories of your life, you be sure to let me know because I will listen. So, my beautiful friend, you have a good rest. Thank you for allowing me the blessing of this time with you. You are very precious to me, and I am grateful for the gift of you. So thank you. We'll be together again soon. Good night.